let me just lay out. Sorry, let me just lay out what we are going to cover in the next 40 minutes or so. We'll do introductions to the three of us. We'll give you some general information about the university and the Department of Political Science. We will cover the fields of study and research, commonly called subfields in political science, that are common between the MA and PhD program. We'll go into some details of what the structure of each program is. We will cover graduate career outcomes, such as the types of jobs our graduates get. We will then discuss the application process, the application requirements. The application deadlines are December and January. We'll cover what that means. And then we will turn over to question and answer. Okay, so that's basically what we'll cover in the next 40 minutes or so. Let's do introductions. Why don't you guys go first? So Katya, please.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for spending some time with us this morning, evening, wherever you are. So my name is Katja Coleman. I'm an associate professor within the department. I study international relations. This year, I'm also the field chair for IR. My own research tends to be kind of at the intersection of international organizations and international security. So I'm interested in peace operations under the UN and under regional organizations. I'm also interested in the norms around international security and the use of force and how those evolve. And to the extent that I have a regional focus in my work, it tends to be in sub-Saharan Africa. So a recent project, for example, is about the role of national staff in UN peace operations. And again, thank you for joining us.
Hi, and my name is Chris Fernandez. I am the graduate program coordinator for political science. I see a lot of familiar names here, so I welcome you all. I am not a professor, but I'm a staff member, and my role is to make sure that the graduate program processes and procedures are running smoothly, and support for graduate students. And I'll turn back the mic to you, Arjun.
Thank you both. What Chris means is that he keeps everything running around here. So he is too modest. What Katya did not mention is that she has also supervised several students to completion in the PhD and MA. My name is Arjun Chaudhary. I'm an associate professor in the department. I'm also the director of the graduate program. Like Professor Coleman, I'm also in the international relations subfield. My research is largely on states in the international system, how they've changed over time, and to simplify, why most states in the current international system don't work all that well. So that's what the bulk of my research is about. So I'm going to hand over to Professor Coleman now.
Hi again. So I'll tell you a little bit about UBC as a whole and then how the department fits within that. So you have the stats up there. As Professor Chaudhary mentioned, there's 2 campuses to UBC for almost 70,000, so 68,000 students total. Of those, about 56,000 are on the Vancouver campus, which is where the Department of Political Science, our Department of Political Science is. And that includes about 10,500 graduate students. It's a very international place. Again, we've got close to 20,000 international students across the 2 campuses, 166 countries, lots of degrees granted, as you can see, in 2020, and alumni, 370,000 living at last counted around 148 countries around the world. And we value those international connections and the various perspectives that it brings to us a lot. We're a busy place, we do good work. There's about 10,000 different research programs funded across the university at the moment. In terms of the Times higher education rankings, we're 34th in the world as of in this year's ranking, among the top 3 universities in Canada and the 3 universities in the top 50. And if you take the index, and apologies, that's my typo, it should be 2021 times higher education impact ranking. So this thinks about how research contributes to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We're ranked 13th globally in that this year, one of 2 Canadian universities in the top 20. And I think that's all part and parcel of part of the strength that our students, our international students, bring to the campus together with the faculty. So within all of that, our department itself, if we can go to the next slide. There we go. That's us. 37 tenure and tenure track faculty, as well as new faculty hopefully joining us, and lecturers. 45 PhD students at the moment, 57 MA students, so roughly equally split, slightly more MA than PhD, as you can see. And about 43% of our students are our graduate students are international. And by international, we mean US, Asia, Latin America, Africa. It is really a very broad spectrum. And again, to our mind, contributes very much to the both the feel and the diversity of the department and the work that we do here. And we have connections to various research institutes and centers across the university. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Here's a list of them. It's not an exclusive list, but these are some of the centers with which faculty have connections and or students have connections in terms of their research. So there's a relatively new and rapidly growing Center for Migration. We have a Center for the Study of Democratic Institutions. There's an Institute for Asian Research, Critical Indigenous Studies, European Studies, Gender, Race, Sexuality, and Social Justice, Institute for Resource, Environment, and Sustainability, the Liu Institute for Global Issues, the School of Public Policy and Global Affairs, and a US Studies program. So again, certainly not everybody links, certainly not to all of these, but they bring additional strength to various kinds of research programs. And they're available in terms of the sort of cross-fertilization of ideas and connecting with other grad students and faculty members on particular areas of interest.
Thank you. So that's an overview of the university. Let me speak about our specific programs. I'll start with the MA program, and then I'll go to the PhD program. Our MA program is a one-year program. The majority of our students finish in 1 year, and it is structured around 1 year. So the coursework is you have to take 6 courses, of which 4 must be in the department. Poly is our internal designation in the university. 6 courses, 4 must be in the department. And then you take and then you write an MA thesis generally in the summer. The MA thesis is 8,000 to 12,000 words. It is supervised by a faculty member. And among these 6 courses, there are no set requirements. That is, there's no specific course you have to take. Generally, our MA students tend to take a range of courses, but many will take our political science methodology courses increasingly, that is statistics and research design, which I'll speak a little bit more about in just a moment. So those are our MA program requirements. The course offerings, we are organized around the main subfields, so to speak, in political science. This is the same for the PhD, by the way. Those subfields are political theory, comparative politics, international relations, Canadian politics. We also allow students to take courses in US politics. And you can also take courses outside the department, whether they are in Indigenous studies, public policy, Asian studies, economics. For example, we have a PhD student who's taking a microeconomics course. You can take it in sociology, anthropology, history, philosophy. The MA program, as I said, you can take 2 of your 6 courses outside the department. The PhD, it's different, but you do have a lot of choices at UBC. So the timeline, as we laid out, is 6 courses over the 2 semesters. So the 2 semesters run September through December, and then January through end April. So 3 courses a semester, and I'll give you details in a moment as to what a teaching assistant work means, but MA students are funded through 1 teaching assistant position per semester, and generally that's how you organize your time. You have 3 courses and TA work in the fall, 3 courses TA work in the spring. In the summer term, you move to focusing on your MA thesis. And your MA thesis is built upon ideally a seminar paper you'll have written for one of your classes. You will redraft and develop it in consultation with your supervisor. And then you will defend it generally in about July or August. And the defense generally means that you will present it in a public session. There will be your supervisor present, and you will be examined by what we call a second reader, which is a faculty member who will confer with your supervisor on your final mark. So that's the MA thesis or defense. Again, as you can see, it is a 1-year program. Let me move to funding. I already mentioned that you will be offered a TA-ship, a teaching assistantship. The teaching assistantships over the year, it's about $6,500 a semester, so it's about $13,000 for the year. International students will also get an award which reduces their tuition cost by $3,200. And the goal here is that we bring the international student tuition equal to the domestic student tuition, which is about $5,000 a year. So the goal here is to bring the net cost of attendance, net meaning tuition, the TA-ship minus the tuition, to be equal across domestic and international students. In addition to this MA funding, and I should note that we are generally the only program in Canada, the only political science program in Canada which funds all our MA students. Toronto used to, they no longer do. So we do put a lot of investment into our MA program. In addition to this funding, and this funding is assigned to all students, by the way, all incoming students. Canadian students may apply for funding from the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council. This funding, it's called the CGSM fellowships. It funds up to $17,500 a year for domestic students. But again, you have to be a Canadian citizen or permanent resident to be eligible to get this funding. And you can apply through your undergraduate institution if you want. Generally, for MA students, you will have to have applied for this funding prior to coming to UBC, because we have a 1-year program. And if you apply now, you can't use it while you are here. In addition to this, MA students may also apply for travel grants and conference supports up to a maximum of $500. This is internal department funding. So that's MA funding. Let me now move to the PhD program overview. And again, feel free to put questions in the chat. We will return to the questions in the Q&A session. We just want to give you the big picture overview right now. The PhD program, recall I said that the subfields are common across the MA and PhD program. So the same subfields: political theory, comparative politics, international relations, Canadian politics, and US politics. The coursework requirements in the PhD program, and I'll show you the year-by-year breakup in just a moment. The coursework requirements, you have to take 12 courses, of which 8 must be in the political science department. So you can take up to 4 outside. Generally, our students take less than 4 outside the department, but you can take up to 4 outside the department. And if you are coming into the PhD with a master's degree, you may request transfer credits from your master's, but it is up to us to accept those or not. And in general, we encourage you to take the courses we offer because we have set it up within a certain curriculum. And the hope is that you progress through our curriculum. After after you do your coursework, there are 3 other requirements. You have to take a comprehensive examination, and that is one examination in what is your major field. So you will choose a major field in which you take 4 courses of those subfields, and you have a minor field in which you take 2 courses. You are examined only in your major field. Following your comprehensive examination, generally within 6 months or so after that, you have to write and defend a dissertation prospectus. A dissertation prospectus is basically an outline of what you are going to do for your dissertation. So for example, you lay out a research question. You talk about the types of evidence you will need and a research strategy to find and test your arguments on this evidence. And this is called a 649, but it's a dissertation prospectus, and you have to get approval for this before you can proceed to writing your dissertation. After this, you have to write your dissertation. You have generally these range from about 150 to 300 pages, give or take. And then university rules are that your dissertation defense requires you're sending your dissertation out to an external examiner. This is somebody from outside the university. Once the external examiner approves the dissertation, you can have a formal defense, which is a public session with your supervisory committee. This is a committee of your supervisor plus 2 faculty members from the department, plus 2 university examiners. That is 2 faculty members within UBC, but from outside your committee, have to also read and approve your dissertation. So it's quite an involved process, and expectations are high, suffice to say. So just like I gave you for the MA program, let me give you the timeline for the PhD program. The first 2 years are your years of coursework. So recall I said you have to do 12 courses. You will generally do 3 a semester for 4 semesters. At the same time, in years 1 and 2, you will have a combination of opportunities. It could be a teaching assistantship. It could be a research assistantship. You will have some opportunities for work. And in general, incoming PhD students, we fund the first year at least on fellowship. So you don't have to serve as a teaching assistant or a research assistant. And this is designed for you to really focus on getting adjusted to life at UBC and to focus on your coursework. So I'll talk a bit more about that when I talk about the funding. But the first 2 years are coursework. The third year, as I said, you generally take your comprehensive exam in the fall of your third year. And recall, there's one examination. So you do your examination, and then you move to writing your dissertation prospectus. And you should, university rules are that you have to defend your dissertation prospectus, it's called advancement to candidacy, by the end of year 3. This is a university rule. In year 3, again, you will largely be paid through teaching assistantship and research assistantship. So the first 3 years, do your coursework, complete your examination, defend your prospectus. That's your tasks, and the funding is a combination of fellowship, TA-ship, RA-ship. Years 4, 5 are really the meat of your dissertation writing. You do your research. It may involve field work. It may involve doing a survey or archival work. All those things are really done in years 4 and 5. And this is really the time that you should also be trying to submit papers for publication. Again, the funding sources here are going to vary because there's fellowships, there's other sources of funding, but insofar as the department provides funding, it will be largely in the form of again, TA and RA work through years 4 and 5. And then finally, in year 6, year 6 is the year you have to complete your dissertation. Again, this is a university rule. You are expected to complete your dissertation by the end of year 6 or 72 months. And generally, if you're finishing your dissertation in the 6th year, the fall of the 6th year is generally when you go on the job market in political science. The job market basically is when you apply for academic positions. The deadlines run September through December. And also for postdoctoral fellowships, those deadlines are generally October through January. So the fall of your 6th year is when you start applying for academic positions. And the expectation is that by the summer of your 6th year, you will have your dissertation out to the external examiner and have it defended by the end of summer. So 72 months, this is the timeline. Again, the 3rd year advancement to candidacy and the 6th year finish your dissertation are UBC Senate policy. That's the expectation. I've spoken about this briefly, but let me get into some details and give you the dollar amounts. I said already that you will largely be funded through teaching assistantships and research assistantships. There's also fellowship support. So let me just lay out the structure of this. The way in which you are funded when you enter the PhD is that you are guaranteed funding for the first 5 years. This is conditional on good academic progress. So you have to be doing the things I laid out, your coursework. You have to pass your exam on time. You have to advance to candidacy in 3 years. Conditional on that, we guarantee funding for the first 5 years. And the funding generally takes the form of a combination of a living stipend through a fellowship, a full tuition waiver, and offers of teaching assistant employment at various points within these 5 years. And on average, all this adds up to $32,000 to $35,000 a year per year for 5 years. In addition to this, it may be the case that your supervisor says, I have a shirk run and I can offer you some extra funding through a research assistantship. So for example, my student Josh, he's a current advisee of mine. I pay him about $5,000 a semester to do RA work for me. This is quite common. You would agree with this, Chris and Katya? Okay, so this is the floor. It is supplemented by various other forms of intra-departmental work. In year 6, we try and offer, we don't guarantee it, but we do try and offer TA-ships and some other funding to support dissertation completion. So if you are close to finishing your dissertation, we will try and offer you some extra funds to speed that up. So this first bullet point was about departmental and university funding. Canadian applicants are also encouraged to apply for Tri-Council. In our case, that is the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council funding. You are eligible as a Canadian citizen or permanent resident. You are eligible for these fellowships for years 1 through 4 of your PhD program. And we encourage you to apply every year until you get a grant or your eligibility expires. And that is because these grants are quite generous. They bring in $20,000 to $35,000, and the Trudeau and Vanier fellowships are $55,000 to $60,000. So it is really in everyone's interest that you apply for and ideally win some of these fellowships. In addition to all of this, in the time you are in the PhD program, you are also eligible for monies for conference travel. You will also be eligible to be sent to what we call summer training. So for example, there is ICPSR in Michigan. It's a quantitative research workshop that operates in the summer. We tend to send students there. There is IQMR, which is qualitative methods at Syracuse. Every year we can send 1 or 2 students to IQMR, so on and so forth. This is just a very standard additional training that PhD programs do, and we participate in it. So we will fund you for that. In fact, there was this bullet point. So I've covered this. I will skip over this. So everything I told you on the last slide, this is in addition. All this stuff is in addition. This money is not guaranteed. It is generally awarded in intra-departmental competition, and it is conditional on our budget situation in any given year. So we can't promise that you will get this money, but it is quite likely you will. You will just have to apply for it, and there will be conditions on it. Okay, let me now move to, I've given you the structure of the program, the support we give our students. Let me now move to what happens once our students finish the program. So we track our, what we call our placement outcomes. That is quite simply, where do our students go once they receive their degree? And we've tracked this going back to 2004. Basically, we know where every one of our PhDs is right now. And overall, our record is quite strong. We have placed students, frankly, all over the world. In Canada, you can see some of these institutions, but let me talk about a couple of the recent recent placements. Last year, Eric Merkley, one of our students, got a job at the University of Toronto. A couple of years ago, Edina Beauvais was placed at Simon Fraser University here in Vancouver. And we have many more such students. Kathy Walker just started at the University of Saskatchewan, so on and so forth. So our placement record in Canada is quite robust. Increasingly in recent years, we have been placing many students worldwide. And this includes, in recent years, Yoel Kornreich has started working at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Just last month, an excellent student, Justin Alger, got a job at the University of Melbourne in Australia. Several of our students work in the UK at Sheffield, the University of Cardiff, and so on. So you can see from this list of 10, and these are all tenure track or equivalent. So what in the United States or Canada is called an assistant professor position is called a lecturer position in the UK, but it's basically a full-time academic position, largely focused on research. Our students are placed really all over the world. It's something it's something we are just enormously proud of. Now, I should say that we are talking here just of PhDs, obviously, because the PhD is a requirement for an academic position. Increasingly in recent years, the trend in the discipline is that before you start a full-time tenure track position, you will do a postdoctoral fellowship. And this trend goes back about a decade. I myself was in a postdoc before I came to UBC. And what we also see is that our students are getting postdocs at really outstanding institutions. Some of these postdocs are funded through the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada. So the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada has a national fellowship competition. And should you win one of these fellowships, you can hold them for 2 years at an institution of your choice, which is not your degree granting institution. So many of our students have held these fellowships all over Canada and the United States. Others have held postdocs actually at these universities in question. So Yana Gorokhovskaya held a postdoc at Columbia some years ago in, I think it was the Institute of Eurasian Studies. I'm not sure, but some such institution. So the bottom line is postdocs are increasingly common in political science, and our students are succeeding in these competitions at quite impressive rates. Now that's academic side, and frankly, most of our students want to go into academic work, and so that's what most of our students do. However, an increasing number of our students want to use their skills outside of academia, and they too have been doing really outstanding work in various in NGOs. I think the modal non-academic placement is in a Government of Canada agency. That makes sense given where we are. Some of these have included StatScan, the First Nations Health Authority. In fact, Grace Lohr is an MLA in Victoria, a member of the Legislative Assembly. So that gives you a sense. I should also say what we are seeing in recent years is people going to the private sector, particularly using research skills in statistics and public opinion. So you will see, for example, Charles Breton went to work for Vox labs. Andrea Neusser went to work for Innovative Research, which is a polling company in Ontario. So you can see a range of placements. The main thing I want to emphasize is that these are placements where you are using the skills you gained in your program. And that's quite important. That is, we hope that whatever you want to do with the skills you gain in our program, you will use those skills in productive and well-remunerated employment going forward. That's the hope. This is my last slide. I'll hand over. We track our PhD program. We also track our MA outcomes. The MA outcomes, it's a bit harder to track because MA students move from job to job with much greater frequency. But generally we can say that there are sort of the modal positions are people going to work for the government. So for example, my student Graham Bant went to work for the First Nations Health Authority, which is a BC government. It's within the huge phalanx of health infrastructure in BC. That's an example. Anton Bezglasny went to work for the Department of Agriculture in Ottawa, so on and so forth. Various provincial, federal, and local government positions are probably the modal outcome. In addition, we send a lot of our MA students onto PhDs in political science in a range of departments. Yale, I assume, is referring to my own student, Stephen Moncrief, but we have several others who go on to excellent PhD programs, including our own. And then obviously with 20 or so MAs graduating a year, many will go into NGOs, others will go into think tanks, and many go to work in the private sector. The bottom line is there's a lot of things you can do with the MA degree. So on that note, I will now hand over. Oops, sorry.
Hi, so it's me again. And recognizing, of course, the irony of my telling you about the student experiences, you're certainly welcome to also reach out to current students. And should you wish so, we can also try to facilitate that. But here's certainly what we aim for, and from when I chat with our grad students, what we also find to offer. So we're dividing this between academic opportunities and community engagement. The two go hand in hand in many ways. In terms of our academic opportunities, we're a fairly close-knit department. So we interact frequently with graduate students. My own office is next to the grad student room. So, they wave mornings, evenings, and every time we go get coffee, which turns out to be quite a lot. You'll get to know your faculty members in department, in the courses that you take in the department. Normally when you arrive, you have an initial advisor who will help you get started or answer any initial questions that you might have. But in my experience, and I certainly hope that this will be yours too, department faculty tend to be open and available and very happy to talk with graduate students. So if you have questions, most of us are happy to chat about the program. We're quite proud of it. We're very involved in it. We like to talk about it. And the department staff is there and superbly willing to help with whatever questions come up. So we tend to interact a fair bit, just more or less informally in the corridors as well as in classes. And then there's more sort of professional or organized settings. So there's a set of professional workshops that the department will offer on things from career developments and job talks, different kinds of places to go, how to publish. And there's other institutional workshops, for example, the stats department or the library will offer it. And in addition to that, the subfields with Canadian and comparative clustering together with the US, there's a political theory and there's an IR set of workshops which meet on a regular basis, and faculty members and graduate students present work in progress in a sort of a more low stakes environment. You present the first drafts of your work, you get feedback that's both perceptive and constructive, right? So you tend to get pointed to the things that aren't working, but you also get feedback about how you might be able to fix it. So I find these workshops enormously useful. There's a speaker series, several speaker series in the department. So once a year, there's a Mark Zucker Memorial speaker, and then there's speakers that get coordinated across various subfields. We almost always include at the end of a speaker's meeting a sort of select protected time for the speaker to interact just with graduate students. So you can ask any questions that you didn't have time for, you didn't think about in the formal Q&A session. And there's an annual graduate student conference in which graduate students send their own work and get sets of feedback from grad students and faculty members. All of which is to say that we hope to provide and work pretty hard to provide a supportive environment, an inclusive environment. We spend very little time in the department sort of arguing about what the right way to do political science is, and instead recognize that there's lots of interesting projects and lots of reasons that you might take one approach or another, and we value good research. And interesting research. And that's where we start from. And we know that our grad students go on to do really interesting research that we really enjoy engaging with. So if those are the academic opportunities, there's then also, if we can go to the next slide, the kind of community environment that we hope to offer. So there is a political science grad student association, which is quite active, and also there's a representative who attends department meetings. In many of our department decisions, we have graduate student representation, so we think of our graduate students as really an integral part of our department. They help us make good decisions. There are social, obviously there's the informal social gatherings, which I may or may not always know about, but we try to have department gatherings. So there's a beginning of the year social, there's a social coming up over lunch, just again to help graduate students across years connect with each other, to allow cohorts to meet, and for faculty to meet grad students as well in a kind of informal session. Many of our grad students work in writing groups together, both as a way of enforcing deadlines on each other, reading each other's work. It's especially useful, of course, if you're working in areas that are close to each other. So there's been a writing group on environmental issues, for example. There are study rooms provided in the department for graduate students to use. So there's one, as I said, next to my office, there's a computer room, and there's a study room downstairs. All TAs in the university are also part of a union. So there's that representation. And again, it's an international community. It's an inclusive community, and it's really a nice place to be. So this is where, if I can make it work, I'm going to change my background just to reinforce. Yeah, there we go. So that's what the beach looks like down by UBC. It's not a bad place to live altogether. So lots of outdoor activities to be done, even if it rains, which it kind of sort of does sometimes, it being the West Coast. So the UBC benefits from an excellent urban transport system. So you can get in and around Vancouver and then out to places like Whistler in the mountains, or Vancouver Island, or one of the many smaller islands, via buses and ferries. We have good food, I would like to think, and we enjoy it quite a lot. And there's a lot of beautiful surrounding areas, lots to do on campus. The Museum of Anthropology is world renowned, some lovely gardens as well, and within the city and beyond. So with all that time, whenever you're not working, researching, studying, teaching, there's a lot of other things to do as well, which we all quite thoroughly enjoy. And I think I'm handing over to Chris for the admission requirements.
Hello, everyone. And for the application requirements, so first is usually we look for a relevant academic background. Now we say this broadly, really, because we get graduate students from different types of disciplines, right? But it does help to see some social sciences content in terms of your academic background. Usually on average, we do, of the successful applicants, we do look for a first-class GPA in the last 2 years of study. This is especially true of MA students. Apart from that, we also look at your statement of intent. Now, your statement of intent is really a sort of like a 101 on what you're intending to research, and also most especially why you think UBC is a good place for the type of research that you are planning to do. And we also, it also helps to add the reasons of why you'd want to study it, right? Are you thinking of pursuing, for example, PhD work? Say if you're applying for master's and you're considering PhD work, or are you looking at landing a policy job, for example? Apart from the statement of intent is 3 academic letters of references. Now, we do recommend that you use academic letters of references because the form that your referees would fill would ask specifically on your writing abilities and research abilities, right? Sometimes you can add, for example, if you've been out of school for a while and you're thinking of adding a professional reference, you can do so, but you always want to give your professional reference a heads up on the type of questions that would be asked of them, right? But in general cases, we always recommend that you use 3 academic letters of reference. Now, the writing sample is only for PhD applicants. We don't require that for MA students. But your writing sample is usually could be a term paper or a thesis that you've written. There's really no upper limit on the type of sample that you can upload in your online application, but we usually do recommend, if you have like a shorter journal, that would be easier for the admissions committee to digest. Now, the GRE is a requirement for PhD applicants, but it's not required for MA students. Now, if you have taken your degree in Canada, say you're applying for PhD and you've taken a degree in Canada, then it's not going to be required for you. It's recommended for MA and Canadian PhD applicants, but it's not a hard requirement. And for this year, we are also accepting the GRE Home Edition. Now, I see a question here. If for MA applicants, if it would be a disadvantage if you don't have it, the answer is no. What we look at the MA pool, we don't use the GRE mechanically at that point. We use it in context to your with your application, right? And this goes with your statement of intent and also comparing that with your GPA. Now, the English requirements, if you have a degree that's originating from a non-primarily English-speaking country, then that is a hard requirement, and that's a requirement from the Faculty of Graduate Studies. TOEFL and IELTS are usually the 2 tests that we recommend. On the Faculty of Graduate Studies website, there is other options for other tests, but usually TOEFL and IELTS are the most reliable. So if you are going to take a language test, that's what we recommend. If you've taken your degree outside an English language, primarily English language institution. Now, if you have completed it in, say, for example, in the US or Canada, then there is no need to provide an English requirement test. And let's see, I see students from Quebec who have studied French required to take a TOEFL test. No, it is not, because it's the institution is in primarily in Canada. So I see a minimum GRE requirement score. We don't actually look at GRE scores mechanically. So we usually look at the percentile there of how you score. So we don't really have a GRE minimum score requirement. And the GRE has to be at least 2 years recent, so 24 months. Now, on the last item here, it's helpful if you are able to identify, and this goes into your statement of intent. If you have seen our faculty profile and you've seen, you know, the faculty's publications and research, and you think that you'd want to work with a particular faculty member, it's always useful to indicate that in your statement of intent and also in your online application. And the reason for that is that we try to match you if you are admitted to the program with a faculty member whose research interest is closest to yours. Now, there is no guarantee, of course, that you will always get your preferred faculty member to work with, but we do try and facilitate that. Now, this also goes to saying that the formation of your MA thesis supervisor and also the PhD dissertation supervisor happens at a much later stage of your program, but this is just so that there is a smoother transition leading up to that. And I think we can go to the next slide if we have one. Yes, so again, the application deadlines. So for the PhD, it's a little bit earlier, so that's going to be December 15, 2021. We do require that the online application is submitted by that date. And then for the MA applications, it's 2 weeks, or a little bit about 2-3 weeks after that is January 7th, 2022. And yeah, so it's a hard deadline, primarily because we need to parse the applications and process. Additionally, what I would say is it helps to hone your application, right? Like we don't evaluate this on a rolling basis. So basically, we collect all the applications after the deadline. So I would encourage everyone to carefully craft, say, your statement of intent, and don't rush your application, but also don't submit at the very, very last deadline, right? So yeah, I think we can go to the next slide. Right, so I think we'll go to the Q&A, and because of that, I think I'm going to stop recording now so that we could allow for a good Q&A session.